Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. We just got a ticket to get a 4-star servant of our choosing, though it only applies to ones released before Lost Belt 7. You have until the night of the 17th to grab the ticket out of your box, and you have until the 19th to pick a servant. But you're not out of the woods just yet. To keep your choice, you have until the 30th to ascend the servant once and get them to Bond 3. If you have an existing copy that meets these requirements, then you're good to go. In forming my recommendations for this video, I've generally but not absolutely avoided servants that are in the general pool or have close competitors from the evocation lineup. General pool servants are ones that you can get at any time of the year in any non-class restricted banner, and in my experience, they'll find their way to you sooner or later, even in a semi-casual account. So for example, someone like Estrella is reasonably good, but I won't be recommending you pick her due to the opportunity cost of doing so. Some of these options are much more annoying to get in a reasonable time frame. There are two general ways to approach picking your ticket. The first is to go with a servant that gets the overwhelming bulk of their value at NP1. That way you expand your tactical options without needing to commit to future or perhaps past copies. Among these, the best is Calamity Jane. Her third skill lets you apply a suite of buffs to an ally based on how many stars you have. At 40 stars, this package gives Invuln Pierce, which is a rare and obnoxious commodity to get otherwise. The alternatives have trade-offs, like Sherlock being hard to get off the field, or Sweet Crystal being a significant damage loss compared to the usual CEs. To get around the star requirement for Jane, you typically run her and one of your supports with a Stardom CE. Or you run two supports with Stardom CEs and then swap in Jane as a taunt. If you're a committed Jane enthusiast, her Bond CE actually drops 20 by itself, but you don't even need to go that far. Not only is the Remembrance pool due to receive a number of these, but Jane also gets a buff next year during the Mahoyo crossover, letting her get between 10 and 50 on an RNG roll. Even if you're feeling risk-averse, that lets you swap out a 5-star CE for a 4-star dump, which saves on cost. Calamity Jane is one of those servants where if you don't have her, you'll absolutely feel her absence sometime down the road. Next up is Barghest. She's a survivalist saber who mostly relies on her skills and normal cards to stay in the fight, while also constantly purging enemy buffs. Her Noble Phantasm is mostly used to reduce her own cooldowns, and she's not much of a farmer, so you get most of her power upon acquisition. I have a servant guide on her and she hasn't received any buffs, like ever, so it'll still be accurate. That said, she's a strong candidate to get buffs due to her popularity, so I wouldn't be surprised if she gets a leg up in the near future. The third of our one-copy wonders is Thomas Edison. His combination of targeted CDR and overcharge, long-lasting, party-wide recurring resources, and a combination of NP and skill seal and world faith domination mean that while he's rarely the optimal pick for a specific situation, setting aside that very strange Bramante challenge quest, he has access to a ton of generally useful effects at the same time. This means that he has high splash ability. You can backline him as a the fight's gone to shit let's stall type of servant, or you can swap him into backup servants that put a premium on the cooldown reduction / overcharge combo, like Ash the Savior. Lastly, as a story lock servant, he's fairly inaccessible under normal circumstances, so grabbing a copy for value is a decent idea. Summer Raiko is next on the list. Those of you who picked her up as an attacker back in Summer 2 will have been disappointed by her inflexibility and complete lack of upgrades. But Raiko quickly found a second life as a buffer. Her targeted buster buff operates at a pretty significant magnitude, and it coming with cleanse is pretty handy too. Her attack buff is small potatoes, but it acts as a multiplier for servants that lack it, so it's functional. By the way, shout out to the High Rollers for reminding me that Raiko saw use as recently as the Grand Lancer Indra fight on JP. Those fights lock you into only using the same class as the enemy you're fighting, so good buffers are often in short supply. So if you're planning to use a Buster Servant as your own Grand Lancer, or perhaps you plan to do the double Melusine strat, it might be worth picking up Raiko just in case. Lastly, I want to talk about Nitocris. She's a general pool servant, and for those of you who skip straight to this part like troglodytes, I've mostly avoided picking them because they seem to have a way of finding you in time. So a general pool servant has to be disproportionately useful to get the nod. Caster Nitocris is one of those servants, since she's an insta-kill attacker with a 100% battery. This makes her situationally useful against nodes with insta-kill checks, though not to the same degree as the 5-star Ashia Doman. A real tragedy, I know, though there is a double Dome and single Nito setup for the Bleached Earth QP node. Otherwise, she's mostly useful in the early to mid-game, where you can blow away bronze rarity non-servant waves, sometimes even twice in a row, depending on your craft essences. Now we move on to the depth picks. These are attackers that scale with NP levels, so you're best off picking these if you already have copies, or you plan to roll for them down the road. This is the most relevant to Creamild, who, as of this recording, is currently on raid up with Wangina. Cream is on the shortlist for the most powerful 4-star attackers in the game, being a single-target Arts Berserker with a targeted taunt, 50% battery, and anti-chaotic skill. Her Noble Phantasm is completely ridiculous too, preemptively purging defense buffs and dumpstering dragons to boot. It's a crazy package. Really, the only argument against picking Cream Mode for depth is that while she's a completely ridiculous 4-star, she encroaches on territory covered by 5 stars. So if you've already gone deep for Summer Castoria or Draco, or you plan to go crazy for Uesugi Kenshin, picking Cream Mode has diminishing returns. But there are differences in coverage. None of those servants can force taunt an ally, which is one of the most useful bits of utility a servant can have access to. Unlike Draco, Cream Mode can hit extra class servants and non-servants effectively. While she doesn't have a universal purge like Kenshin, removing offensive buffs as well, she benefits from Berserker class advantage. While Cream is much more vulnerable than Summer Castoria, the latter has no way of dealing with heart protection. So there are situations where you may opt for Cream over your usual 5-star. It's just a matter of weighing the opportunity cost of doing so versus the other options on this list. Next up is Summer Erise, yet another single target art servant. She benefits from an anti-servant power mod and a taunt, but unlike Cream Mode, she taunts herself. She can combo this with her Evade and Avenger passive to gain a bunch of charge from being struck, while staying somewhat healthy. Her taunt skill also applies a curse, which activates bonus damage on her Noble Phantasm. It's a slightly gimmicky but very functional way for her to gain resources and deal damage. There are a number of situations in this game that call specifically for a single target Avenger. Many in Ordeal Call 2, where non-Avengers are often penalized, and Ordeal Call 4, which is filled with rulers. So if you already have your single target Ultra Generalist set up, then a more targeted fixture like Erise is an option worth looking at. Mysterious Heroine XX is a very odd servant. In some areas, she's almost year 1 in design, being stuck with a bunch of single turn effects that leave her feeling anemic for up to 5 turns between her burst windows. She's mostly carried by her upgraded Noble Phantasm, Foreigner class, and Anti-Threat to Humanity buff. This makes her a powerful beatstick against many foreigners, pretenders, and the occasional saber. Berserkers too if you really want, but you typically don't get double X for that. Her ability to hit pretenders and other foreigners is why you'd take her. That combo can be a difficult itch to scratch with a generic roster. But if you have a strong foreigner already, or at least a low NP Kukulkan, I'd honestly pass on double X. But if you don't, you may find her to be a necessary evil. Next up is Bavanji. Much like Barghest, she's a story-locked servant, but unlike her fellow Tamlin, she's a big dick attacker. Late next year, she gets an NP upgrade that sends her damage to the top of the Archer chart. Only Ptolemy and King Tut place higher in terms of neutral damage, but both are limited 5-star servants, and the latter has some very significant downsides. Bavan has the advantage of having her NP's damage scale off the curse stacks of her target, so there are ways of supplementing this with curse command codes. Combine this with her defensive tool, disruption skills, and 60% combined charge between her 2 batteries, and you arguably have the best single-target archer in the game. The only argument I can think for not getting her is that if you don't have any copies, we actually get a single-target welfare quick archer during this year's Guda Guda event, Saika Magoichi. She can fill the general role at a low cost, and she comes at NP 5, so players within accounts should take one of the other options with a higher opportunity cost for skipping them. Summer Murasaki is up next, and she's a very strong single-target arts rider who does bonus damage to Earth attribute enemies. She hits hard with her upgraded Noble Phantasm, though her skill set being so debuff-centric is a bit of a turnoff. For baseline rider needs, I will note that the evocation pool eventually gets Cinderella, so this isn't a do-or-die sort of pick, though they do work in very different ways. Summer Charlotte is a single-target arts caster, and the single-target caster role is a weak area in evocation, consisting of the anemic Onicure. Charlotte is even more debuff reliant than Murasaki, and her damage will swing wildly depending on whether you can land a skill seal or not. But this damage scales on overcharge, so you can really push your advantage when it does land. Her battery is quite a nice flex tool, working as a 30% split charge with an ally, or 60% surge if she uses it on herself. I will warn you though that like many casters, Charlotte really doesn't do much at NP1, so she requires commitment. AoE Saber is another very annoying role to fill, consisting of a few really high-end 5-stars, a bunch of mediocre 5-stars, and a landslide of janky 4-stars. While Saber Alter is certainly jank, being a buster servant who actually cares about enemy counts, she's one of the more accessible options as one of the very first story banner unlocks. If they really wanted to, a new player could even fish for her with my infamous Salter Casco account opener. But setting that aside, her ability to loop while maintaining any kind of damage makes her a rare commodity among the non-5-star sabers. So if you're weak in the AoE Saber role and plan to skip Yamato Takeru, your options are fairly limited, and picking Salter is one of them. Now I have a pair of general pool servants to consider. Hephaestion is a single-target pretender, one of only 2 in the game, and the only one available on NA. The other is the future 5-star Phantasmoon. While you can use a Berserker for a general role, true class advantage against alter egos is a hard thing to find, and Hephaestion has a number of creature comforts like a full charge battery and the ability to fight casters, something her class normally can't do. Alter egos are rare enemies, but the ones that do show up are almost always a pain in the ass to fight, so if you lack a dedicated option like Assassin Kama or Hephaestion, you're gonna feel their absence. The example that comes to mind is that awful fight in Lost Belt 4, where Doman shows up as a door boss Rajna Alter. Zenobia is another general pool pick. She's an AoE arts archer, and the effective options to fill that role tend to either be expensive like Ptolemy or Durga, or jank as fuck, like Emiya Archer from the hit game Honkai Star Rail. Zenobia loops with consistent damage, and she doesn't break the bank. That's the upside. The downside is that she gets one of the worst buffs in the game's history, and I don't think she'll get another for quite some time. So who are you going to pick as your SR servant? Or perhaps you already used your ticket, you sly dog. Looking for a little validation, huh? What? Used it on Summer Gareth? Thanks for watching, lads. I stream every weekend at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Twitch.tv/Finotaisen. If you missed any blowout gotcha disasters or other terrible events, I have an archive over on my stream VOD channel. Link in the description. Depending on when I get this out, that may be the best way to watch me roll for Grand Rider Nemo, aka Noah. So take a gander if you're curious. Till next time.